She was once known as the happiest kid on television. The smiling little girl in khaki who grew up in front of millions of viewers. So when Bindi Irwin shared photos of herself lying in a hospital bed in March, fans didn't just feel concerned. They were genuinely frightened. Her appearance had changed. Her energy seemed different. Rumors spread fast. But the truth wasn't hidden at all. It was written across years of medical records, 2 major surgeries, and a number that is almost impossible to believe. 51 separate endometriosis lesions removed from her body. But how did it reach that point? And why did she stay silent for so long? The answer finally came on March 7, 2023. After nearly a decade of suffering in private, Bindi revealed that she had endometriosis. She shared the news with millions of followers on Instagram, only days after undergoing surgery. For years, one of the world's most recognizable young women had smiled through constant pain without ever explaining why. By the time she told the public, the operation had already happened. The scars were fresh. But the story behind them stretched back much further. And that's where everything begins to change. Endometriosis is a condition where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside the uterus. It can attach itself to organs, cause inflammation, create scar tissue, and lead to severe pain that affects almost every part of daily life. It is far more common than many people realize. Yet getting a diagnosis can take years. For Bindi, it took nearly 10. But why was it so difficult for doctors to see what was happening? Instead of staying close to home in Australia, she traveled almost 10,000 miles to New York City. There was only one surgeon she truly trusted. Dr. Tamer Sekin at the 2nd Endometriosis Center inside Lenox Hill Hospital. He is one of the world's leading specialists in this disease. Traveling across the planet for one doctor says everything about how specialized the treatment was. And once surgery began, it became clear that every mile had been worth it. What the surgeon discovered shocked even experienced medical professionals. During a long operation, doctors removed 37 separate endometriosis lesions along with a cyst. This wasn't a small procedure. It revealed years of disease quietly spreading through her body. Every lesion represented tissue that had been growing, causing pain, and leaving damage while Bindi continued smiling for cameras, filming television shows, competing on Dancing with the Stars, getting married, raising her daughter, and appearing at Australia Zoo as though nothing was wrong. Suddenly, every happy moment looked different. But here's the question. How could something this serious stay hidden for so long? For Bindi, finally receiving a diagnosis felt like relief. That may sound strange, but the alternative had been far worse. For years she lived with pain that nobody could explain. The surgery lasted only a few hours. The search for answers lasted almost 10 years. 37 lesions don't appear overnight. They grow slowly over time. Which raises a difficult question. How many doctors saw her during those years? And what exactly were they telling her instead? The advice was almost unbelievable. Drink tea. Try meditation. Relax. Speaking later about her experience, Bindi explained that doctors often questioned whether stress or anxiety might be causing her symptoms. Again and again she left appointments without answers. She was told that what she was feeling was simply part of being a woman. Nothing serious. Nothing to worry about. Yet her condition continued getting worse. And what she was actually living through was far from normal. Every day brought nausea, severe cramping, stabbing pain, fatigue, and digestive problems. This wasn't an occasional bad day. It became her normal life. The pain followed her almost everywhere. Looking back, she revealed that it had started when she was still a teenager. That means the cheerful little girl viewers watched growing up was already quietly suffering behind the scenes. But what happens when pain lasts so long that you stop imagining life without it? She eventually said something that perfectly summed up her experience. It's not normal to be in pain. Those simple words carried years of frustration. She had spent over a decade believing something was wrong while repeatedly hearing that everything was fine. If someone as famous, connected, and financially secure as Bindi Irwin struggled for 10 years to be believed, what does that mean for women without those advantages? It's a question that reaches far beyond her own story. That explains why finally hearing the words, "You have endometriosis," brought her comfort instead of despair. Someone had finally looked inside her body and confirmed that the pain was real. She wasn't imagining it. She wasn't exaggerating. She wasn't simply stressed. The disease had been there all along. For a while, it looked like the story finally had its happy ending. Surgery was successful. Recovery was underway. Life seemed to be moving forward. But then, 2 years later, everything changed again. And it happened on one of the most important days of her life. On May 10, 2025, Bindi traveled to Las Vegas for the annual Steve Irwin Gala, an event celebrating her late father's legacy. Guests gathered expecting to see the whole family. Instead, 2 seats remained empty. Bindi never made it to the ballroom. Her appendix had ruptured, and she was rushed toward emergency surgery. Out of every day her body could have failed, it happened on the night dedicated to honoring her father. But that wasn't even the most surprising part. Her mother Terry chose to skip the gala entirely so she could stay beside her daughter in the hospital. That left Bindi's younger brother Robert, only 21 years old, standing alone before hundreds of guests. He explained what had happened while reassuring everyone that his sister would recover. Even he admitted the family never expected surgery that day. Yet one detail makes the entire situation even more remarkable. Bindi had arrived in Las Vegas planning to attend the event despite feeling unwell. She intended to push through the pain, just as she had done for years. But this time, doctors stopped her. Her appendix couldn't wait. There would be no speech. No appearance. No smiling through another medical crisis. For once, her body forced her to stop. Yet what happened next turned an emergency into something completely unexpected. Why would someone facing emergency surgery decide to get on another plane first? Instead of going into the nearest operating room, Bindi flew across the country to New York. She wanted the same specialist who had treated her in 2023. Her appendix had been bothering her for months, and she realized this emergency created an opportunity. While surgeons removed the failing appendix, Dr. Second could also check whether her endometriosis had returned. It was a bold decision. 1 surgery. 2 answers. And what they found changed everything again. After waking from surgery, Bindi shared the results herself. Her appendix had been removed. Surgeons also repaired a large hernia that had remained since the birth of her daughter Grace. But the biggest surprise came afterward. Doctors discovered 14 new endometriosis lesions growing inside her body. 14. Quietly returning after what many believed had been a successful surgery only 2 years earlier. And here's the truly unsettling part. Nobody had been looking for them. If her appendix hadn't failed, those lesions might have continued growing unnoticed. They weren't causing symptoms obvious enough to trigger another investigation. They were discovered only because Bindi specifically requested that doctors check while she was already in surgery. The disease had quietly returned without warning. Suddenly, what looked like a finished chapter became something entirely different. Was surgery ever really the end of the battle? Think about those numbers. 37 lesions removed in 2023. 14 more removed in 2025. Months later, Bindi added them together herself. The final total came to 51. Across 2 surgeries, doctors also removed a painful ovarian cyst, repaired her hernia, and removed her appendix. Every procedure told part of the same story. A disease that had shaped 13 years of her life. In one recovery update, Bindi shared something heartbreaking. She said she could finally live everyday life without feeling like she might throw up or pass out from pain. Imagine that. Simply getting through the day without collapsing had become something worth celebrating. She didn't describe it dramatically. She didn't ask for sympathy. She simply stated the truth. And somehow, that made it even more powerful. But one number still deserves the most attention. It wasn't 51. It was 14. Those 14 lesions returned within just over 2 years after successful surgery. For Bindi, treatment didn't mean the disease disappeared forever. It meant buying time. It meant relief, not a cure. That changes the way her entire journey is understood. The operation so many people viewed as the finish line was really just another stage in a much longer fight. And once you see that, her transformation suddenly makes perfect sense. The quieter public appearances. The visible exhaustion. The time away from cameras. None of it was mysterious. It was the reality of living through years of surgeries, recovery, chronic illness, and constant pain. By late 2025, things finally seemed to stabilize. Recovery was progressing. Her health was improving. Then came March 2026, when hospital photos appeared online once again. Fans panicked immediately. Had the nightmare returned? The answer surprised almost everyone. Those hospital pictures weren't new at all. They were old photos shared during Endometriosis Awareness Month. Bindi wanted people to understand what she had survived. She reflected on having more than 50 lesions removed and described the overwhelming pain she had once lived with. The post wasn't announcing another emergency. It was reaching out to women still searching for answers. Her message was simple. Nobody deserves to suffer in silence. Then came another Steve Irwin gala in May 2026. Once again, Bindi wasn't there. Once again, people feared the worst. But this time, the empty seat meant something completely different. Her family explained that long international travel was still difficult while she continued healing. She stayed home in Queensland instead. There was no emergency. No operating room. No sudden crisis. She simply chose to protect her health. After spending most of her life pushing through pain for the sake of appearances, she finally gave herself permission to rest. That decision may have been the healthiest choice she has ever made. Instead of forcing herself onto a stage, she stayed at Australia Zoo, surrounded by the animals her father loved, focusing on recovery instead of expectations. For years she performed strength while suffering in silence. Now she was finally listening to her own body. That's the real story behind Bindi Irwin's transformation. Not a mystery. Not hidden secrets. Just 13 years of pain, 2 major surgeries, 51 endometriosis lesions, countless misdiagnoses, and the courage to finally tell the truth. Her openness has already started changing conversations about women's health. And perhaps the most important part of her story isn't what happened to her. It's how many other women may still be waiting for someone to believe them.